Most people spend their entire lives living in the eyes of others. They are like actors performing desperately on a stage. They constantly stare at the expressions of the audience below, but they completely forget that they are the main character of this play. The smallest yet most fatal difference in our lives lies right here. Are you addicted to what the outside world thinks of you? Or are you addicted to exploring it? If you are listening to these words right now, you might have reached an extremely critical turning point in your life. You are beginning to realize that the days of running around to satisfy the expectations of others must end. Those who achieve true greatness in life actually share a secret common trait. They simply do not care what other people are saying, doing, or judging. They use all their energy and curiosity to understand themselves. This is Zen Seeker Wu. Today I want to have a deep conversation with you. We will explore how to completely break free from the gaze of others and reclaim control of your life. I want you to think about a scenario that might make you break into a cold sweat. Think back to the last time you put aside all work responsibilities, family obligations, and the judgment of others. When was the last time you sat down quietly to think about who you really are? I am not talking about your anxiety. I am not talking about your bank balance. And I am not talking about your fear of the future. I am talking about the true desires deep inside your heart. I am talking about the person you are evolving into every single day. The reality is that we are far too used to looking outward. We have completely broken the connection with ourselves. This disconnection traps us like walking corpses in a life that does not belong to us. We do boring jobs and maintain relationships that drain us. Many middle-aged people ride their scooters through crowded streets every day. Or they navigate complex office politics in busy tech parks. When they get home, they still have to face the health issues of their elders and the academic pressure of their children. We play the roles of good employees, good parents, and good children, but we have completely lost our most authentic selves. Today I want to tell you that focusing on yourself is not selfish. It is a necessary form of self-rescue. When you truly begin to explore inward, you are not just changing your own life. You are redefining your relationship with the world in a much more powerful way. I think back to my early 30s. That was the most confusing stage of my life. I had experienced several complete failures. I sat alone in that empty apartment, surrounded by the echoes of disappointment. At that time, I had spent 10 whole years trying to please others. I listened to the so-called advice of people who had never produced any real results. I trimmed myself neatly to fit the molds of society and culture. That night, I suddenly asked myself a disruptive, hypothetical question. If there was not a single person in this world I needed to please, if I did not need to prove my success to anyone, what would I do in that dead silence? I found I actually had no answer, because I was too much of a stranger to myself. I did not even know the shape of my own soul. From that day on, I made a decision. I was going to become a student of my own soul. I would study every single one of my thoughts and emotions with the extreme discipline and passion of a scientist studying the mysteries of the universe. This shift from outward to inward eventually led me from confusion to clarity. I want you to understand that this focus is not about becoming a narcissist. It is about making yourself a better vessel. If you are a doctor, but you do not improve your medical skills, that is true selfishness. By the same logic, if you do not live your life with clarity and wholeness, what do you have to offer this world? The world does not need more submissive imitators. The world needs shining, authentic souls. When I talk about focusing on yourself, I am referring to 4 extremely crucial dimensions. They are your consciousness, your emotions, your inner pursuits, and your physical evolution. Let us start with consciousness. The brains of most people are actually like a public square. They are stuffed full of the noise of social media, the anxiety of the news, and the judgments of others. If you want to control your life, you must treat your mind as a sacred piece of land. You must personally decide what to plant and what to pull out. For many people, the first thing they do when they open their eyes in the morning is grab their phones. They stuff all the garbage information of the world into their brains at once. This behavior is essentially handing the control of your mind over to the outside world. If you start your day in a state of passive response, it is no wonder you feel anxious and lost. A person who truly knows how to focus on themselves will strictly monitor the information entering their mind. You will choose to read books that expand your awareness. You will listen to voices that inspire your thinking. This is not a random burst of inspiration. It is a deliberate practice. I once met a very exhausted middle-aged man. He was a project manager at a tech company. He told me he felt his life did not belong to him at all. He spent every day putting out fires, handling the needs of others, and solving problems that were not his. By the time he got home late at night, he did not even have the energy to think about who he was. I asked him how much time he spent focusing on his own goals and dreams every day. He froze, and then fell into a long silence. He had become used to putting himself last later. We worked together to establish a sacred time for self-reflection. Even if it was only 20 minutes a day, this time was unshakable. It was dedicated entirely to examining his own direction of growth. A few months later, the look in his eyes changed. He regained that long-lost sense of control. When you can consciously manage your mind, you must then face the second dimension. That is the depth of your emotions. Most people are completely on autopilot when it comes to their emotions. An unfriendly look from the outside world, or a careless complaint from an elder, can make them depressed for an entire day. But focusing on yourself means you must become the master of your emotions. You must observe your anger, fear, and sadness like you are observing a chemical reaction in a laboratory. You must realize that emotions are not disasters happening to you. They are the meaning you assign to external events. Whenever you feel anxious, you should immediately activate your observation mode. You must analyze in your mind how this emotion arose. You must look at the thought behind it. You must ask if there is another way to interpret it. I designed an emotional toolbox for myself. For example, when I encounter a massive setback at work and frustration is about to drown me, I immediately search my mind for the evolutionary opportunity hidden in this situation. This simple mental shift can quickly switch my identity from a victim to a learner. Many people spend a lot of time learning how to drive a car or operate complex software, yet they have never opened the manual for their own emotions. They let the waves of emotions smash them against the rocks, not knowing they actually hold the steering wheel in their own hands. Next is the third dimension regarding your inner sense of meaning. This is not something mystical. It is about your connection to something beyond trivial daily life. I have met many extremely successful entrepreneurs. They possess astonishing wealth and fame, but in private they tell me they wake up every day feeling a bottomless emptiness. It is like they are acting in a terrible play written by someone else. This is because they focus too much on external expansion and lost their inner anchor. Focusing on yourself means you must constantly ask those fundamental questions. You must know clearly why you are here. You must know exactly where your talents should be used. You must know which values you would rather die than give up. This sense of clarity is not achieved once and for all. It requires you to constantly align yourself internally. I personally set aside time every week, specifically to review my values. This allows me to make precise judgments quickly when facing temptation and pressure. When your inner world is solid, the storms of the outside world can no longer shake you. You know which opportunities you absolutely must let go of, because even though they look tempting, they will make you turn your back on your true self. This ability to act from a center of authenticity is the highest form of freedom. Finally, you must never ignore your physical evolution. Your body is the only vessel you have to experience the world. If this vessel collapses, all your thoughts, emotions, and pursuits will lose their foundation. Some people think focusing on the body is vanity. Actually, the exact opposite is true. Respecting your body is the highest form of self-discipline. When your energy is abundant and your battery is full, your thinking will be sharper, and your emotions will be more stable. I have always viewed exercise and nutrition as being just as important as my career. If you cannot even manage your own sleep and diet, how can you possibly win in the complex game of life? When you truly start attempting this comprehensive self-focus, you will definitely encounter resistance. This resistance will first come from the people around you. People are used to the you who is easy to talk to, who has no strong opinions, and who is always on call. When you start setting boundaries, when you start saying no to pointless gatherings, when you start investing your time in yourself, they might think you have changed, They might even think you are selfish. But you must understand something. When you become stronger, wiser, and more peaceful through self-discipline, your value to the people around you actually increases. It is just like the oxygen mask on an airplane. You have to put it on yourself first before you can save others. A giver who is empty inside and full of resentment is of no use to anyone. This transformation requires a brutal honesty with yourself. You must identify the daily habits that numb your soul. You must question the lifestyles you have taken for granted. I suggest you start a practice called the Sacred Hour. Set a fixed time every day where you do not process any external information. Leave it entirely for yourself. During this hour, you can do anything that helps you evolve and feel fulfilled. This is not just a habit, it is a declaration. You are announcing to the world that you are the master of your own life. Your growth deserves to be treated as a priority. Besides the daily sacred hour, you also need a regular life review. Every weekend, you must review your life like you are reviewing a financial statement. You must take inventory of where you spent your energy this week. How many choices were made out of genuine desire, and how many were forced? The psychologist Carl Jung once said that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This regular review is meant to take that sovereignty back. Once you awaken, you can never go back to that state of sleepwalking through life. You will start to declutter the relationships that drain you. You will start to stay alert against opportunities that do not align with your values. In this process, you must learn to establish loving boundaries. Saying no does not mean you are cold. It means you have a sense of responsibility for your own life. Every time you say yes to an activity you do not truly want to attend, you are actually saying no to the true self inside you. Over time, your inner world will become fragmented. We must learn to live with extreme intentionality. We must invest every minute and every second into the things that make us more whole. This world is full of various voices. They are all teaching you how to become more successful, how to make more money, and how to win the respect of others. But very few people teach you how to return to yourself. True success is actually living according to your own will and becoming a person you deeply like and respect. When you no longer need to confirm your value through the praise of others, you have already won this game of life. This constructive self-focus will grant you a deep, unshakable confidence. This confidence does not come from being better than others. It comes from having a profound understanding of yourself. You know clearly where your boundaries are, you know where your talents lie, and you have accepted your own shadows. This sense of wholeness allows you to maintain inner order even when facing the messy chaos of life. If you feel suffocated by life right now, if you feel you are just playing a minor role in someone else's script, then please stop. Starting today, spend a little more time every day observing yourself, studying yourself and nourishing yourself. This might be the most valuable advice I can give you. Do not wait until you have time to change, because time will never just open up unless you actively create that space. Your future depends on whether you have the courage today to move your gaze away from others and plant it firmly on yourself. In this financial world full of variables and this complex human society, you yourself are the only leverage. When you constantly improve the strength and resilience of this leverage, you can move any reality you desire. Do not chase butterflies. Go plant your flowers. When your garden blooms, the butterflies will come on their own. Even if the butterflies do not come, you still have a fragrant garden. This is the most essential wisdom of life. Many people ask me if focusing on yourself makes you cold. The exact opposite is true. A person who does not understand themselves often loves with a sense of demanding and control, because they try to use others to fill the emptiness inside them. But a person who truly focuses on self-growth and has a full heart gives love from their overflow. This kind of love has no pressure and asks for nothing in return. This is why I emphasize that focusing on yourself is a higher form of altruism. In the financial world, we talk about the compound interest effect. Compound interest applies equally to personal growth. If you improve by even 1% every day, if you understand yourself just a little bit more every day, the inner strength you accumulate after a year will be astonishing. This strength will transform into your intuition for solving problems. It will transform into your calmness in the face of pressure, It will transform into your sharp ability to capture opportunities. You are no longer a piece of driftwood flowing with the current. You become a ship with powerful engines and a precise navigation system. What this world lacks least is smart people. What it lacks most is people who live with clarity and authenticity. Clarity comes from a deep insight into your own desires. Authenticity comes from a firm defense of your own values, when you no longer distort yourself to please others. When you start enjoying this constructive self-exploration, you will find that the colors of life have changed. The trivial matters that used to bring you pain now become samples for observing yourself. The competition that used to make you anxious now becomes a training ground to temper your will. We must learn to build an invisible monastery for ourselves in this busy modern life. No matter how noisy the outside world is, your heart always has a quiet place. That is where your original intentions and ideals are stored. Whenever you feel tired or lost, go back there. Realign your direction through inner dialogue. Remember, your life is not a showroom for others to look at. It is your own laboratory. Here, you hold the highest experimental authority. You can fail, you can make mistakes, but the one thing you cannot do is give up the pursuit of truth. That truth which belongs entirely to you. I want to leave you with a challenge. Try to be an observer for the next 24 hours. Observe your first reaction to the requests of others. Observe the insincere words you say just to get praise. Observe your unconscious anxieties. Do not judge, just observe. You will be surprised to find how much energy we waste on things that have nothing to do with ourselves. When you realize this, you have obtained the key to change. When we talk about this constructive obsession with the self, many people feel an instinctive fear. They think, if I no longer care about what others are doing, if I no longer chase the standards of success recognized by society, will I be left behind by the times? Will I become a weirdo disconnected from the world? Actually, this fear proves exactly how deeply poisoned you are. You have been poisoned by that mediocre, collectivist thinking for so long that you believe going with the flow is the only safe path. But I want to tell you the most cruel and true reality in both the financial world and the game of life. In any highly competitive field, mediocre imitators will only ever get the scraps. Only those individuals who dare to dig deep into themselves and show their unique personalities can obtain truly outsized rewards and irreplaceable status. This uniqueness is not something you learned, it is something you always had. You just buried it with your own hands in order to fit in. Imagine this, if the service or product you provide in the market can be done by anyone, why should you make big money? You can only rely on burning your physical energy and time to compete. But if the value you provide stems from your unique life experience, your unique aesthetics, and your unique emotional depth, then you are the only one in this field. You have no competitors. So focusing on yourself is actually trading for the most scarce resource in the world by polishing your only leverage, which is you. When you start studying yourself, you are actually making the investment with the highest return. Speaking of this, I suddenly thought of a very interesting phenomenon. When we scroll through social media, we instinctively pay attention to people who seem to be doing better than us. We study their outfits, their lifestyles, and even their mental models. We think this is called learning, but in reality, this is called losing yourself. When you put your attention on others, your energy is leaking out. You are subconsciously telling yourself, I am not good enough, I need to become like them. This self-denial quietly weakens your inner drive. Actually, the biggest case study you should be researching is the you that you see in the mirror every day. Your talents are hidden in your fears. Your strength is hidden in your anger. Your unnoticed preferences are hidden in your awkwardness. If listening up to here has ignited that fire inside you wanting to break through your current situation, or if you suddenly realize you have wasted too much time caring about irrelevant people, then please take this moment to like this video and click subscribe. This is not just an action, this is a contract you are making with yourself. It means you have decided to turn your gaze back to yourself from now on. In the comments section, I want to hear your true voice. You can write down, I have decided to stop playing a minor role in the stories of others. I am going to start writing my own script. Or you can share a small decision you made recently to please yourself rather than others. Every comment is a sincere resonance in this noisy world. Your participation will help this power of awakening spread further. Let us continue to dive deeper into the topic of specific knowledge. In my understanding, a person This kind of knowledge is not something you can learn in school. It is the kind of thing you cannot teach someone else through a manual. It is the magical chemical reaction produced by years of focusing on yourself, blending your talents, interests, curiosity, and practical experience together. Only when you treat yourself as an object of observation, constantly experimenting and reflecting, can you extract your own specific knowledge, and this knowledge is your true moat in the division of labor in society. Think back to those moments when you felt in a state of flow. In those moments, you no longer cared if you had messages on your phone. You no longer cared what others thought of you. You were completely immersed in the creation of the present moment. That state is actually the moment you are completely aligned with your true self. And the reason most people cannot feel this joy is that they are always trying to prove themselves in fields that do not belong to them. They see others making money through live streaming, so they learn live streaming. They see others getting rich in the stock market, so they study stock charts. But they forget to ask themselves in their hearts, do I really love this? Does this really fit my mental structure? This blind outward pursuit is essentially a form of laziness. It is the laziness of avoiding self-exploration. Because studying yourself is too hard. It requires you to face your dark side. It requires you to face the weaknesses you do not want to admit. But if you avoid this step, all your subsequent efforts are like building a house on quicksand. You will find that no matter how hard you try, you always feel empty. You always feel you are missing just a little bit. That missing little bit is the absence of your soul. When you are not present, your success is just an empty shell. The psychologist Carl Jung once pointed out that if a person does not go through this process of individuation, their life is actually just repeating some ancient collective archetype. It sounds profound, but simply put, it means you live as a spare part. Parts can be replaced, but individuals are irreplaceable. Focusing on yourself is about evolving from a spare part into a unique living being. This process requires you to have the rigor of a scientist. You must record your emotional fluctuations. You must analyze your decision-making logic. For example, study why you become submissive in front of certain people. Study why you habitually procrastinate on certain tasks. I have found that what many people call confusion is actually because they are holding someone else's map, trying to find their own treasure. Your map is carved into your genes. It is carved into those lingering preferences you have had since childhood. Focusing on yourself is about piecing this map together, one piece at a time. You must allow yourself to try things that seem impractical, as long as they make you feel excited. Because that feeling of excitement is the guiding light of your soul. In this process, you must learn to endure loneliness. When you no longer cater to the frequency of others, you will find that your once lively social circle suddenly becomes quiet. This is actually a good thing. This quietness clears out a massive psychological space for you, allowing you to hear your inner voice. I know a very talented writer. He used to attend various gatherings every day to fit into the so-called literary circle. He wrote those popular, pretentious articles. Even though he made money, his whole being was depressed. Later, he decided to quit all circles. He returned to his hometown and only studied his own inner feelings every day. The things he wrote began to fill with power because that was his own flesh and blood. He told me that the hardest part was not the writing itself. It was admitting that he did not need that fake liveliness. This honesty about your own needs is the highest level of focus. We must understand that your energy is extremely limited. If you scatter it across countless social nodes, you will end up keeping nothing. But if you gather it upon yourself, you can generate massive pressure to pierce through the fog of life. I often think about this inner alchemy of the self. The process of alchemy is painful. It requires high temperature and high pressure. It requires you to constantly remove impurities. Those impurities are your expectations of others and your dependence on social evaluation. When you burn all these things away, the shining, hard thing that remains is your true self. This true self is the foundation of your standing in this world. Let us look again at the nature of this world. The world is actually an extremely fair mirror. If you are not responsible for yourself, if you always try to escape yourself, the world will give you all kinds of chaos and pain. But if you start taking extreme responsibility for yourself, If you direct all your attention and resources toward your own evolution, you will find that the whole world steps aside for you. This is not magic, this is a natural law. When you become clear enough and powerful enough, those blurry, chaotic things will naturally dissipate. I have a very profound realization. When a person begins to truly love themselves and focus on themselves, the energy field around them changes. They no longer give off that desperate need for approval. Instead, they become very self-sufficient. This self-sufficiency generates a massive magnetic pull. It actually makes high-quality people and high-quality opportunities actively draw near. This is why it is said that the best investment is investing in your own brain and mind. You must learn to subtract from your life. Remove the relationships maintained just to save face. When you throw away all these burdens, you will find yourself as light as a bird. You can focus more on polishing your craft, enriching your emotions, and strengthening your body. The compound interest effect brought by this focus will bring earth-shattering changes to you in a few years. This change is not just the growth of external wealth. More importantly, it is an inner peace. You will no longer be kept awake all night by a negative comment. You will no longer be crushed by a small failure, because you know those are just external fluctuations, and your roots are deep in the earth. This sense of stability cannot be given to you by any designer bag or luxury car. It is the psychological fortress you built through countless reflections and countless moments of honest self-confrontation. Many people will doubt this. They will ask, how do I know if I am focusing on myself or just being selfish? Actually, the boundary is very clear. Selfish people benefit themselves by harming others. Their eyes are still fixed on the pockets of other people, but people who focus on themselves serve the world by fulfilling themselves. Their eyes are fixed on their own growth. When you become wiser, more knowledgeable, and more tolerant, everyone around you benefits. You become a source of light. You do not need to deliberately do anything. Your existence itself illuminates others. Look closely at this society. If every parent could figure out their own life first and stop forcing their unfulfilled dreams onto their children, how many family tragedies in this world would be reduced? If every employee could find their specific knowledge first and stop suffering internal drain just to survive, how much would the creativity of this society increase? If we all return to ourselves, this world will not become cold. Instead, it will become more authentic and diverse. This evolution of the self is actually a marathon with no finish line. You have to face new temptations and the pull of old habits every day. But I promise you, once you taste the feeling of having complete control over your own life, you will never want to go back to the past. That awake happiness, that total awareness of every minute of life, is the highest level of happiness a human being can experience. We must learn to protect our attention just like protecting the last penny in our bank account. In this era of the attention economy, countless people want to use various algorithms to plunder your time. They want you to pay attention to their gossip and their conflicts. You must act like a gatekeeper and strictly refuse these invasions. You must interrogate them in your mind. Does this have anything to do with me becoming stronger and clearer? If it does not, then ask it to leave. You must precisely invest your attention, this most precious asset, into the coordinates of your own life. I also went through that phase of caring extremely about what others thought. Back then, every time I posted an update, I would deliberate over it repeatedly. I would check to see if anyone liked it or commented. If I was ignored, I would feel a deep sense of defeat. Looking back now, that was such an absurd waste of self. I handed my happiness over to the fingers of others. This was not just foolish, it was a betrayal of myself now. I prefer to write a few paragraphs in the silence of the early morning, just for myself to read. Or I walk alone for a few kilometers in the forest, in that deep solitude with myself. The power I feel is far more real than thousands of likes. We need to build an internal evaluation system. When others say you are successful, you do not need to be smug because you know where you still fall short. When others say you are a failure, you do not need to be discouraged because you know what you learned in the process. When you have this autonomy, you are truly liberated from the mental slavery of society. You can freely define your success and define your happiness. This freedom comes with a price. The price is that you must bear the consequences of all your decisions. You can no longer blame your failures on your family of origin. You cannot blame your boss. You cannot blame luck. You must admit that your current situation is the sum of all your past choices. Although this admission is painful, it also gives you the power to change. Since you chose all of this, you can choose differently in the future. This complete sovereignty over your own life is the necessary gateway on the path to becoming strong. In the financial game, we often say we should look for undervalued assets. Actually, the most undervalued asset in this world is your untapped potential. Most people only develop 5% of their energy. The remaining 95% is wasted on anxiety, jealousy, and people-pleasing. If you can develop just 10% more by focusing on yourself, it is enough for you to live an extremely superior life in this world. This development does not require you to seek outward. It only requires you to cultivate inward. We must learn to run ourselves like we run a company. You need your research and development department. That is your time for learning and thinking. You need your operations department. That is your daily self-discipline and habits. You need your brand department. That is the true self you show to the outside world through your work. And you are the CEO of this company. You do not need to report to any shareholders except your soul. When you implement this philosophy into your life, you will find that even your view of time changes. You no longer feel that time is being consumed. You feel that time is being invested. Every minute of self-awareness, every page of serious reading, every deep physical workout is adding value to your future. This sense of fulfillment will make you completely bid farewell to that empty anxiety. The reason we are always anxious is that we always want to control things we cannot control, like the opinions of others, the trends of the mob. But when you focus on yourself, you are paying attention to the only thing you can control 100%. That is your actions, your mindset, and your growth. When you reach into the realm you can control, that sense of mastery will make you extremely calm. This calmness itself is a highly lethal competitive advantage. Imagine this, in an interview or a business negotiation, between a person who is anxious inside and eager to prove themselves, and a person who is calm inside and completely self-sufficient, who is more attractive. The answer is self-evident. You cannot fake that kind of inner stability. It is the medal left behind after countless nights of wrestling with and integrating yourself. At the end of this reflection, I want to ask you to do one specific thing before you go to sleep tonight. Turn off your phone. Take out a piece of paper. Write down 3 decisions you have always wanted to make, but never started because you were afraid of the judgment of others. Then pick the smallest plan among them and execute it tomorrow. Even if it is just buying a book you are truly interested in but seems useless. Even if it is just posting a genuine, unpretentious reflection on social media. This one small action is the flare signaling the reclamation of your life sovereignty. When you start this step, you might feel uneasy. That is your old self struggling. Do not be afraid. That uneasiness is actually the growing pain. You must tell yourself, I have lived for others for too long, and now I am going to start living for myself. This transformation is the greatest investment you can make in your life. I want to emphasize again, focusing on yourself does not mean you isolate yourself. It means you connect with the world in a more complete and authentic state. When you no longer maintain relationships through people-pleasing, those who stay are your true soulmates. When you no longer trade your dignity for resources, what you get is true respect. This is the true art of living. If this sharing gave you strength, please remember to like and subscribe. Every interaction you make tells the algorithm that we need this kind of deep content about the essence of life. At the same time, I am waiting for you in the comments section. I want to pose a question for thought. If you could throw away all your current identity constraints, what kind of state would you most want to live in this world? Or rather, what does that long-suppressed true self of yours most deeply desire? Do not be afraid to write down answers that sound absurd. There is no judgment here, only respect for courage. Let us act as mirrors for each other on the path of self-exploration, illuminating one another. Remember, you are the only hero in your life. Do not let the opinions of others drown out your inner voice. Now take a deep breath, pull your gaze back, return to yourself. Your brilliance is just beginning. This is all I wanted to share with you. After you turn off the screen, Go shake hands with that long-lost self. This is Zen Seeker Wu. I will see you next time.